The brief that we got from Burna's team was to create an authentic Nigerian barbershop. It's really important to build like a good rapport on set with people that you work with, particularly director, cinematographer. Some of the parts should make up something greater than all your individual parts can make. When I do commercial shoots, I usually flag that up front. I'll ask for like branding guidelines document, also asking for if there are any specifications of what can be on screen, can't be on screen. I was just really ballsy and I was like, I have no idea what you do, but that's why I want to get an internship. They called me back after 15 minutes and were like, yeah, okay, come down for the summer. So this is not going to sustain you. You go get a proper job, and if you want to keep doing this stuff on the side, like, great. I've received more praise than I have in 5 years of working 100-hour weeks, like killing myself. These people are like, oh, you're really good. Like, what are you doing just now? Do you want to like come and be a runner? And I was like, oh, maybe there's something in this. Like, I like that people appreciate what you do here.
How do you break into the creative industry? And how do our experiences shape our careers? Welcome to the podcast that asks the most influential creatives how they got the role that ultimately changed everything and what proactive tips others can adopt to get the picture. I'm your host, Kiosa Sukami, and this podcast series is brought to you by London Podcast Studios. On today's episode of Get the Picture, we are joined by production designer Lottie Toon. Lottie initially had a corporate career for 5 years before transitioning to the creative industry. She has worked across most mediums, from music videos, commercials to narratives, and has designed sets for the likes of Burna Boy, Sony Pictures, and Crack Magazine. Thank you so much for coming to the studio, Lottie. How are you doing? You all right?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. We were literally speaking off camera before that. It's weird for us creators to be on the other side of the camera, so hopefully you're not too nervous.
But it's good. No, thank you for having me.
Fingers crossed. Thank you for coming. So how's your week been going so far?
Yeah, good. I had a commercial yesterday I was on, which was good, pretty straightforward.
Amazing, yeah.
And then, I usually can't remember past a week when I'm busy.
I'm exactly the same. Even like
usually takes a minute.
Week in the future as well. If anyone asks me what you're up to tomorrow, I'm like, sorry, 1 second, I've just got to check my calendar quickly.
I know. Moves quickly with short form as well. So I feel like you're always on to the next one.
So before we get into, of course, your work, let's take it back a little bit and figure out, who is Lottie? Let's take it all the way back. Where were you born and where were you raised?
So I was born just outside of London, but when I was 2, we moved to Portugal, and then when I was 6, we moved to the Highlands in Scotland.
Okay,
and then we moved to St Andrews when I was 8, and then we were there for a while. So we moved around quite a bit, but I consider myself Scottish for the most part. That's where home is for me.
Okay, yeah. So then the time that you spent in Portugal, I'm guessing you were quite young, so you don't really remember much of it, or?
Yeah, I remember bits. There's I still remember. I'm a big nature person, so I still remember being outside a lot, kind of the environment of it and the warmth.
I'm guessing that's the same with the Highlands as well, like being north.
I was thinking about it on the way here actually, and I was like, I think I spent most of my childhood outside when I wasn't at school. So like built in Scotland, it's very wild up there. So we were like building huts.
Yeah.
Just in the days of no mobile phones, and you just go home when you're hungry or it's dark. And that was,
sounds like a dream.
That was it.
Brings us back to like the lockdown days, isn't it? That's when we're trying to really enjoy some of that kind of stuff. So do you have any like siblings? What was your family dynamic like?
Yeah, so I have one big sister, Francine, who I think was really influential actually growing up. So it's just the two of us. She's 3 years older than me. And then lived with her, my mum and my dad.
Okay. So you mentioned she's really, really influential in what sense? Did she kind of inspire you to find the creative route? Yeah,
she's very, very creative. She's actually a writer now. So she spent like 15 years as an editor. She still works in that capacity, but she's now published a book. But when we were young, she's really big on films. When we were really young, she like would draw and write comic book strips. She'd like help me with my revision, like doing comics, like for revision stuff. So yeah, I would always look up to her and be like into what she was into.
And what about your parents? Did your parents do anything like creative at all, or?
So not for work, but when I think about it, they both are creative. Yeah, my dad is a really big music nerd, has like a really wide, eclectic range of music tastes that we grew up on, from like Nirvana to The Clash to Rolling Stones to like Stevie Wonder, like soca music.
Quite a big mix there, yeah.
Yeah, a lot, like a bit of everything, like a big Nile Rodgers fan. yeah, a lot of different stuff. And then he's also a film nerd. And then my mum, she creatively, like, she sews a lot. She would like make our clothes or like curtains, stuff like that, paints. So I had never really thought about it till this podcast. And I was like, oh, actually, yeah, there's these different things were around, but it was very much that they were growing up. It was very much that was sort of a hobby on the side. And I think a lot of creatives identify with this. If it was very much like, this is not going to sustain you, you go get a proper job. And if you want to keep doing this stuff on the side, like, great.
Yeah.
But, you know, there was almost felt like it wasn't really a viable option that you would go and make your living off of something like that. Yeah.
So then thinking about that, like very, very early on. So going into like school and maybe thinking about education, it gets to a time in your life where you've got to decide what you want to have as a career. So knowing that potentially this could be something that you're interested in, but it may not be giving you, you know, the career that you may want traditionally. So what were your thoughts going into school, like picking your subjects and everything? Were you more academic, or were you still trying to maybe pursue something creative?
Yeah, no, I was pretty academic. So I liked both. I was like into maths and sciences, but then I was also quite into like creative writing, English. Yeah, that's another thing in my house was full of books. So I grew up like, there was like one of the houses we moved to, I just remember there were like boxes of books stacked like floor to nearly ceiling where there wasn't space for them, but we just always had these like loads of books. So writing was like something I was into. But I think when I had to decide what A levels to do, I felt like I could pursue the creative things outside of academia, whereas I think it's harder to pursue things like maths, physics, that stuff outside of that. You can, but it's just harder. So I decided to go down that route. So I went down at A level as like maths and 3 sciences.
Wow.
Started off with maths and physics at university, and then switched to just maths at university, so which is unusual, I guess. Yeah.
So how was your university experience? Were you still like at this point were you kind of like certain that you're going to become, you know, an academic person? Like what was going through your mind, and how was your university experience in general?
So maths at university is really different at school. It's very like theorem based, like you're proving a lot of theorems. It's a lot of writing stuff. I preferred the maths that was like physicsy maths. It was like numbers and like the thing of like a thing moves down a slope at a certain angle, like very physical, tangible, like mechanical kind of stuff. So I found it really hard. Found it really, really hard. I didn't know what I wanted to do at all. I've always done a lot of like extracurricular stuff as well. So I was involved in, and I always forget this, I was a producer at the like student theatre in Freshers Week. And I like totally forgot about that. And I was involved in like a charity fashion show, but in a like organisational kind of role. So I guess I was always kind of around creative stuff to an extent when I think about it. But yeah, had no idea what I wanted to do. I got on, I guess this is leading to like career next steps right after university. I got an internship, which was the only internship that like replied to me, which was in an investment bank. Like it was, and I liked it because it was the only one I didn't have to fill a form for. So I just had to write a cover letter CV. And I did a phone interview with them. And I think I nearly didn't get it because they asked me, what do you think we do day to day? And I remember being on the spot and I was like, I can't lie because I have no clue what they do. But I was like,
just need money.
There's no way. Yeah, basically. And also lots of people have been saying, oh, what are you going to do? Are you going to do finance because you're doing maths? And I was like, I don't even know what finance is. So yeah, on the call, I was just really ballsy and I was like, I have no idea what you do, but that's why I want to get an internship. And I was like, they're either going to love this answer or they're going to hate it. I don't know. And they called me back after 15 minutes and were like, yeah, okay, come down for the summer. So at the end of that internship, I signed to do the job, and not necessarily because I even felt like, oh, I want to do this thing. Like the money was good. It's quite a big commitment because after doing the internship, I already knew the kind of hours I'd be doing.
Yeah.
But we would post recession. So there was a lot of scaremongering about our year going into like corporate work. The market was quite saturated with people who hadn't been able to get work for like a year or 2 years, who had done a master's. And I also just wanted to get out, be independent, start working. Like, I remember the first time I wanted to start working, I was like 8, and I was like, why can't I go and get a job to go and get this like outfit in Gap that I wanted? So I think I've always been really driven to like go, I'd always like
be a
work.
career woman.
Yeah. So I was like, cool, if this is my ticket to that, and there's like, let's do it. But it's like I said, it was a big commitment. That was like, work like 80 to 100-hour weeks for 2.5 years.
Wow.
So that was my entry into working life.
So then how was that for you then, obviously leaving university and still, potentially thinking about doing something creative, but working in this, career that you were sort of unsure about? Like, did you have a plan? Did you sort of think, okay, I'm going to do a couple of years of this internship and I'm going to go off and do this next and do this next? Like, what was your going through your mind at the time?
Originally, like when I got into that, I was very much going towards a goal of continuing with that type of career. Like I was like, I wanted to earn a lot of money. Like that was very appealing.
Yeah.
I was like, I remember my first year, I was like, I've never had money like that kind of salary or that independence. And then being around other people, it's like, oh, okay, it's possible that I could, do well doing this. So I spent 5 years kind of aiming for that. But I think there was part of me that was also trying to be what I felt like I should be. There was a certain, like I said, I was kind of quite into that career stuff. But then I sometimes feel like you put an identity on yourself, but it also comes from other people. I think a lot of people would relate to that. You're I was the one who did maths or the one who does this. I think sometimes in families, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not that people intentionally do it, or it might even be your perception and they're not actually putting it on you. Your perception is, oh, I'm this. So I think there was a little bit of subconscious, like, I have to be this person that becomes like providing and like very stable and get a house really young and, all these like big goals. But I was really miserable. I was very, it's a very difficult work environment as well. There's not a lot of encouragement. It's very much like survival of the toughest. And I think I always felt like I was quite bad at what I did. When looking back, it was like, that's for how I work, it wasn't the best environment. But I think I wasn't necessarily bad. It took me years to go back to realize that I was actually quite interested in some of the subject that we were doing, which was like selling. My first job, we were advisory for selling companies. So now I'm kind of having this full circle moment in the last year or 2 years where I'm getting back into like looking at that in the lens of like a small business. Like, how do you grow that? And I feel like there's now some like popular podcasts and stuff. I don't know if you know, like Alex Hormozy and Layla Hormozy. They're quite popular like podcasters that build companies. So they built and sold. They have like a health industry background. And with people who are like building coaching businesses, health businesses, stuff like that. They're very popular. But when I started listening to it, I was like, oh, this is super interesting. They're just taking what's essentially like corporate financy logic and making it very, very accessible to people. So it's been a kind of interesting roundabout that what I thought wasn't interested in, it was just the environment, like wasn't the right environment for me.
So then you did your sort of 5 year stint. At what point do you remember when you decided that, you know what, this is it for me? Let me try something else and see what else is out there.
When I got fired.
tell us about that. Why did you get fired?
I didn't. Officially it was mutual, but I got fired. No, I'd been thinking of, it was basically like push comes to shove. I've been thinking of leaving for like at least 6 months. And then I feel like sometimes things just happen. That's even how I got into going from part-time with film to full-time with film. I'd like had a contract job for 4 years. The contract didn't get extended. I can be a bit of a hippie sometimes. And I think that there's, the universe will tell you when you're ready. And you just run with it when you do. So it was that. And then that was a strange moment because I had no idea. There was not even a sense of like, oh, I've been creative, I think maybe that I'd like to do something creative. I went from having a really clear goal to having absolutely no idea what I would do, which was a really weird experience. Because I was like,
really
I went from school being into academics and like always having the goal of like good grades, you know, university goal, career goal. And then suddenly I had like no goal. And I was like, I don't even know what direction I might want to go towards. So it was a friend who suggested that I was actually going to move to Berlin because a few of my friends lived in Berlin. I'd visited there a lot. It's a friend who had suggested that I try production. We'd had this super long conversation till 3 a.m. one night. I was staying on his sofa because I didn't have any money coming in. You know, I was like, I didn't have a job. I had a little bit of savings, but like not a lot at all. So I was staying on his sofa, and he was a fashion photographer who wanted to get into art direction. And he said that there was this model that he used to work with that is now a music video director with his partner, and that he maybe was going to try and have a coffee and see if he could maybe do some art direction work with them. And he was like, I feel they self-produce. I feel like they might need a little bit of help on production. And I think because of your, you know, that very structured, like corporate background, organizational side, but also you understand creativity, that you could be helpful, you know, as production assistant producer. So I'd made a decision from, which I feel like could be interesting. I'd made a decision. I was like, oh, I've gone through my whole life like being super goal oriented and being very, very logical, because that's how my brain works. And I was like, I ended up really depressed in this job with people that I find very difficult to work with, like not very happy, no idea. Yeah, like not in a great, to put it lightly, I was not in a good place. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try something else. I gave myself 1 year that was an experiment year that I was like, I'm solely going to make decisions based on something if it feels good or not. And I know a lot of people go through their life making decisions like that, but I hadn't. I'd never really done that. So I was like, I'm just going to go on like, does this feel like it's like, feels positive and like fun and stuff, or does it make me feel anxious? I say no. And so I used that and I was like, oh, this sounds like it could be an interesting thing. This like tiny, like 1% chance I might be able to work with these people. They might take someone who has no experience in this. So the friends set up a coffee with Stephanie Lane. So that duo was Silent Tapes, which a lot of people might know. Had a coffee and helped them navigate a difficult situation where they'd had some contract issue with, I don't know, someone had been unprofessional or something on one of their sets. And we just had a discussion about this like funny situation they had to navigate. And I feel that was almost my test. Like, do you have any good ideas about how we can navigate this situation? So then that led me to being a production assistant for them for a while. And then my friend who introduced me to them is called Dwayne. I always tell him, like, I have you to thank for basically my entire career, because I could draw a diagram where I can track every relationship I have now back to Steph and Francis.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
He's going to have 50% shares in everything that you do.
I know.
Amazing. So then obviously doing that sort of first gig for Silent Tapes, did you then at that point think, okay, maybe this is something that I can actually, you know, have as a career? Like, what were you?
Yeah, I think why I wanted to try it was because the friend Dwayne had also gotten me onto a set that was like a commercial gig, filming something for a garden centre, and I wasn't doing anything. So he called me up and he was like, oh, our runner went out for lunch and didn't come back. Do you want to come to set?
That's a bit concerning. You should be like, wait, why did they not come back? Like,
I was like, yeah, okay.
No red flags.
I'm not doing anything right now. So I went to set and I remember being like, I stood in as a background extra. I like arranged some stacks on a table and I went out to get a light bulb that they were really impressed. I like followed direction and got the right wattage. And at the end of that day, I was like, I've received more praise than I have in 5 years of working 100-hour weeks, like killing myself. these people are like, oh, you're really good. Like, what are you doing just now? Do you want to like come and be a runner? And I was like, oh, maybe there's something in this. Like, I like that people appreciate what you do here. And to me, it seemed pretty not straightforward. There's obviously so much to learn. But a comment I got a lot early on was like, oh, you're really calm. And I was like, yeah, when you've been like working at 3 a.m. and someone's like yelling at you when you've had like 2 hours sleep for 2 weeks and you're having to like, I would have to like read 60-page documents looking for like if there was one space instead of 2 spaces after a full stop, because we used 2 spaces after a full stop as a. I did. I'm really good with detail. So I managed to do that. But I was like, after you've gone through all of that, I was like, oh, this is fine.
Talk about transferable skills, right? Yeah.
It's transferable, but I was like, nothing. I'd had situations that. I won't go into like the full extent of them, but I'd had situations where I was like, I know I am never going to be as stressed as this in my life. Like, because the whole setup of what like led to that situation, I was basically like, I'm never going to put myself in a situation that I will feel this again. So I feel like anything else, I was like, I can deal with this. You know, we just need to like fix some problems. That's how I often see like any job on set, which is I use it when I am feeling stressed. I'm like, it's just a problem to solve. And my ethos is there is always a solution. And if you're not finding it yet, you're probably getting too up in your head about being stressed that there's a problem. Do you know what I mean? Just forget that. Just be like, what are our options? What different things can we do? If there's 3 options, what's the best one? Sometimes it sounds really simple, but sometimes if that's all you've got, then okay, that's what you've got to do. You know, like not a doctor who's
not saving lives.
Yeah. Which I know there's a lot of at stake sometimes, but I do go by that philosophy quite a lot of, you know, like things are important and details are important, but
So obviously you naturally came into it in production as a production assistant. So how did you shift into creative?
I was very lucky that I'd realised that I was getting involved in conversations a lot to do with the creative and especially to do with set. So I was producing a project for Olan, and his production designer was like, I've never had a producer that's understood set as much as you do, because we were having this issue of like...
Sorry, Olan's a cinematographer.
Yeah. We'd had this issue of like a location which we've all been in, you have to use one house but make it look like different houses. And I was just helping to problem solve because there were certain things to do with the structure and the colour of the wall and like the way the layout was. Our production designer was concerned that it would give it away. And I was just being involved in that problem solving side of it. And I'd already been thinking for a while, I was like, oh, I really want to be on creative side, because I felt like I was getting involved in creative conversations quite a lot. And I was also like, I think I just want one department's problems to solve. And then like every department's problems.
Our producer in the back is just nodding her head. I agree with that.
I was like, let me just take one. And so I was really fortunate that I remember my last project that I produced was for Damas, and at the end of that video I said to Ola, I was like, I don't think I want to produce anymore. I think I want to art direct. And he was like, oh, well, you're good to have around on set. We'll see if we can still get you on set. So I always feel like I have him to thank for my first chance to do anything as an art director, because production, I felt like I had some background that is logical, that I can provide you with this skill. Art department, I was like, I'm coming here with like 0. I have nothing to show you that I could do this well. So I always feel really grateful for that as well. People in that first year of like people taking a chance on me to do stuff, because I was like, you have no idea that I would be any good at this or not. But you're giving me a chance. So I was like very grateful for that. I would always try to really do everything I could to like do the best job I could. I feel like that's also always been an ethos of mine, is just like work hard, do a good job, be nice to people.
Yeah.
On set. People will remember you just for that. Just for that.
You leave a mark on people if you tick those boxes. Yeah. So what was the first project that you did, and how did that go?
It went well. It was one of Damas's early music videos with Jerome Thomas. So we went to Kent and I learnt how to do I can't remember the name of it, the like rope tying art.
Okay.
You know that Japanese rope tying
I think they make clothing sometimes as well. There's one stylist that I was mentioning. She turned a whole like fashion brand into just like a rope sort of.
Maybe I'm thinking of thing where they like hang people up by ropes.
Okay, I wasn't thinking of that.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So I remember learning how to do that knot because there was a scene where he got dragged down the beach by his feet, and so I was trying to like find a safe like knot thing to do. Shibiri, yeah. I was going to say Shibaru. So I was like, yeah, Shibiri.
He's literally in the background, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I like about my job is like I'm really good at research. I really like researching stuff. So I use that a lot. But yeah, so that first one, it was good. And I remember feeling really, I feel like this is a bit of a nerdy thing to say, but I remember having this little moment where we did the walk round at the start of the day, and I was like, oh, I'm in the role now where I get to like walk around with the director and the cinematographer for the thing. You know, the other roles you don't get to be in that walk round where you're like looking at everything. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in the thing. We're like, yeah, I'm doing the walk round at the start. So that felt cool.
So they're leading off from that then. So at that point you think, okay, I'm now officially an art director, you're set designer, production designer. I'm in this role now. And
no, I was still working then because I couldn't afford to.
Were you still
to
like
do
working doing other jobs
full time?
Full time. Okay, what were you doing at the time?
I was a business analyst on a contract role because I couldn't afford to just. Because I was having to pay rent and everything. So I was basically just having to, I wasn't in a position where that would cover my costs. So I was like, cool, I'll keep. But that job, because it was a contract, I didn't really want, that was like after I'd left the finance stuff. Yeah. I was like, I'll just get a temp job because I need to pay rent. And because I didn't really want that job, I went into it and I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to have to take days off to film. I was just very like blunt about it. And luckily the manager there was super supportive. So shout out Steve, my manager there. Helped me out with, he was really, really supportive about me doing.
When did you sort of feel like this is now becoming something a bit more consistent? I can now stop thinking about the whole business side of things. I can actually pursue creative a bit more.
It was in lockdown. It was in COVID. My contract didn't get extended. It kept rolling over for 4 years. They didn't extend it. That industry was very... like 9-to-5 jobs industry was, a lot of people got furloughed and a lot of companies had like spent a lot of money doing that. After I left, a bunch of people got made redundant at that job. But because film industry had been shut for 3 months, I'm sure everyone remembers, it was like mental as soon as it opened again. So I knew I'd been wanting to go and do it. And when the contract didn't get renewed, I was like, okay, let's just see. I'll just see. I know that there's work. Part of me was like, I'm quite opportunistic. So part of me was like, I'll go where the money is. Like there's work here, there's not work here. But equally I did in that first, I always forget about this, in that first 3 months, I did try and apply to a couple of jobs that are kind of on the business analyst side as well. But industry just wasn't there. And I also feel like there's part of me that was like, I kind of needed to just go all in. I was like, I knew that I needed to try it. I was like, if I try and it fails, I've tried. But I'm someone who I need to have tried. Otherwise it'll really bug me. Yeah. So it was I felt like when my job, I remember being happy when that contract didn't get extended. And I feel
decided for you almost.
It felt like it had been decided for me. Yeah. And a lot of people are like, Charlotte, are you okay? I was like, I don't have any savings. It was lockdown. I was like living on my own, so I didn't really have any. But the way I work, I was like, oh, well, it just has to work. Then. Yeah. I'll just have to I'm quite a believer of like making things work if you have to. Knock on a lot of doors, figure it out. So that was when I went full time. So I guess I'm 3.5 years in now full time.
So out of lockdown then, like you said, there was quite a demand, for work. So did you hit the ground running straight away and back-to-back shoots, or how was your journey straight into that industry?
First year was pretty crazy, but I think what was difficult was I felt like I'd already been in the industry for a while. But I almost felt like I had to start again because being full-time is totally different to being like part-time. So I was having to turn a lot of jobs that year, and I think I took about a 50% pay cut in my first year, which was difficult because, but yeah, it was, and to get that 50% of what I had been being paid, there was one point where I was turning something like 3 jobs a week, which for set designers a lot. There was one week I did like 4 jobs in a week or something, but they were all music videos. They were all like that kind of, because also music video industry is not quite where it used to be. It was when there was like a lot around. It was a lot of I think they were all around the like 10, 15K budget range. You know, that's quite, I feel like that's quite a common like rite of passage for a lot of people is like that. But yeah, I remember turning a bunch of those and it was a very crazy year. And I didn't have a lot of time for other stuff.
Yeah.
But it was worth it because it was then year 2, it kind of settled down a bit. And I was really fortunate that a lot of the producers I'd worked with on music videos, so I'd got into the industry through music videos. That had been my like bread and butter. There were quite a few producers that I'd built relationships with that started moving over to commercial. So there was this natural shift I felt of our cohort of people going over. So I started getting a little bit of commercial, a little bit of branded content. That helped things settle a little bit more because you need to turn less jobs per week for that kind of rate.
Yeah.
And then obviously, like slowly, I was able to increase my rate as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So then over the years that you've done, you know, music videos, commercials, you know, narrative, what's been the experiences across all types of mediums? Have you seen any sort of differences? Any ones that you prefer maybe more than others?
It's a mixture. I do less music videos. I still love them for the creativity that they allow. I feel like I like doing a bit of everything. So I love, for like short films, I do love narrative work. So I really love very character driven set. I love the detail of that and working with directors and drilling into their characters and getting directors say like, oh, I didn't think about that aspect of the character. Let me get back to you. And me being like, yeah, I need to know that to be able to dress, and like having that kind of conversation. I love that about narrative. Fashion stuff I really love because of the creativity of it. I always feel like that's a super open-ended thing. And then I do like commercial branded content. Like I think it's obviously rates are better, but I also think that it's got that bit of a balance of where you're figuring out how to be. It's like a push and a pull. I always feel like there's a push and a pull between director and client. And I feel like it's quite an interesting place trying to facilitate.
Make both happy, essentially.
Make both happy. And I always see myself as being a facilitator for a director first, so to speak, because I think that's a really difficult position sometimes, being a director on those shoots. So I try and create like a collaborative working relationship with them so that they feel supported, but also coming back to that like creative problem solving, providing options of like, okay, I can see what you're trying to do. I think client might need this. How can we make that work? Like how can I make sure you feel that your creative is coming through as much as possible in my set that's in a way that works for client. And I think even I sometimes find there are some like interesting things that come up with the restrictions of being like commercial work, because essentially you're there to sell a product, right? Yeah. So I think it's like sometimes, I think people talk about this a lot as well, like restrictions can sometimes help you be more creative just as much as freedom can. So yeah, I think I do like that world, but I feel like I like it because I have also the short films. I love still shoots as well. Still shoots are great. I love being able to like spend as much time as you can on a set with still shoots, because I think that's one thing I do struggle with, is because I am super like detail oriented. I would love to be able to spend more time setting up sets than I sometimes have.
The video's a lot more fast paced, that you haven't really got, enough time on it, I'm guessing, because scenes are always consistently sort of changing, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and especially with shorts that you're often really restricted with budget. You might have like 2 days to run through. I did a short 2 years ago, I think, where I can't remember how many scenes we did in a day, but we had something like 5 spaces within a house to dress within a day, you know. But those you need to have a really good team. So shout out to my team as well, because I feel like I've been really fortunate to, it's taken like trial and error, but like building, I think, a team that understands how you work and understands like what your aesthetic is. And Melissa, who's like my first assistant, will tell you, like, I don't like U shapes in my like curtain hangings. And I don't like, you know, she's like my second voice now on set, that she knows how I like stuff.
Let's speak on that as well. Like, do you have like a set like creative process when you get a brief? I'm assuming obviously that when you have different mediums like commercials, fashion, there may be different approaches. But do you have like a set way of taking on a project and, you know, things that you look out for?
Yeah, so I think there's usually like a similar workflow that comes through. So I'll get a brief from a producer with, you know, we'll talk about budget. I always make sure to talk about budget up front. Some producers don't want to give you that up front. They want you to commit to the job and then say the budget, but nope. I'm like, we're going to have that conversation now. So we have that whole conversation. It's usually I get the brief. There's 2 ways of doing boards depending on how compressed the timeline is. So if we have enough time, I'll go away and do art boards, which the first round will usually be reference images that are to further accentuate, I guess, what the director has already indicated in the treatment. So I'll get the treatment, I can see what kind of aesthetic the director is going for based on their references through the treatment, but I'll drill into that a bit more. And usually I'll try and bring in some suggestions as well of things that I think might elevate it, so or that might be interesting, or might be, you know, I think that's what I love about a team, is that you're there to put in that extra detail and layer in your area. So I always try to bring something of value to a director that is like, I can see you like this, what if we take it here? So that would be like a first round of art boards. We'd go back and then you'd move on to sourcing, which kind of runs in tandem with budgeting up. So I usually do like a rough budget first of estimates to break it out so that I can flag to the producer if it looks like we're going to be tight anywhere with our budget. We'll start sourcing. So then we get onto boards that have actual images of what we're collecting from Prop House, from suppliers and stuff. And then that will go back to the team for approval. So they'll make selects. Often, like I might provide 4 options of stuff and the client makes selects. So yeah, that kind of sometimes, often with the timeline, that'll run in tandem with actually sourcing stuff, you know, and you make edits back and forth.
Yeah.
Then my van, I crew up. I will have crewed up by then as well. Sorry, crew up is like usually at the beginning. I'll get a budget for how many assistants I can have. I'll figure out who might be best team for that type of job. And then once we've signed off, my van guy goes, collects it, drops it to set. We install.
Amazing.
Send it back with a van. On to the next one.
I wanted just to maybe take some time to go through some of your work and actually, you know, take a moment to break it down and kind of discuss it, maybe think about what went into it and what some of the decisions you made were. So the first project we're going to look at is Burna Boy's It's Plenty music video. So could you quickly just tell us about, you know, how this came about and what sort of stage you were in your career? Because obviously Burna Boy is a massive artist. What was the sort of pretext maybe leading to that?
Yeah, for sure. So it was directed by Troy Roscoe, who at this point we'd already worked together quite a bit. So I'm a regular, I guess, collaborator on his sets. He's great to work with because he's super collaborative, which I like. So I think it was just from having worked together already and he got this opportunity, he kind of pulled in a team, and lucky for me, he wanted me to be on it. Yeah.
Great. And then getting in the actual treatment itself, what was that like? Because obviously there's a lot of mixture of like live sort of shots as well, and then of course the classic sort of looking barber scene. What was it? What was the treatment like, and what were your sort of initial thoughts and sort of research going into that?
So with the art department, the main focus we had was the barbershop. So the brief that we got from Burna's team was to create an authentic Nigerian barbershop. Because of that brief, I was really intentional about bringing the right team onto the project, and it was very much a collaborative process. So the final result was based on quite a lot of people, not just me in my team. So we did a lot of research, and the main reference points I used visually was Andrew Esiebo's documentary photo series of West African barbershops. There was a particular one that had this red checked fabric that I really liked, so that informed us using a red gingham fabric to use on the walls. So we used that almost like wallpaper. It was like a cotton fabric. But also the other images that he'd taken were really useful for just the smalls for different bits. Then we had 2 cultural consultants on our team as well. Tolu and Maria, who are 2 British Nigerian women who are creatives as well, work in film industry. So they came on as like a sense check of things or putting some input as well. We had a traditional like painted barbershop sign commissioned by an artist called Zoe. She's amazing. So she's a British Ghanaian artist. So she came on to do that. And then my assistant Melissa, who I mentioned before, she did some of the barbershop posters. And then I also borrowed some from my local barbers on West Green Road. They very kindly had to go and speak very nicely to the owner. So yeah, I just wanted to mention all of those people because I think sometimes with projects like this, you obviously get named as production designer because you're heading up a team, but there's no way this would look how it looks without all of those people involved. I feel like for me, that's my preferred way of working. Like I very much see myself as bringing people together, trying to also just bring people into things, being like this project as well. I was like, oh, this is super cool. I have to like get Melissa on this. I have to get Maria on this, like I have to bring these people in. So yeah.
Has the barber from West Green or whatever noticed that some of his tools are in there? Has he checked out the video?
I showed it to him. I went back in and I said it because I told him I didn't want to tell. We couldn't tell anyone before. But even though it got out, which you'll see that ended up in the video, that was like a very impromptu moment with all the people outside the barbershop. Was somehow it had gotten out, so all these people just showed up outside the barbershop. And then Troy was like, let's just film it. And so yeah, him and that Burna was like up for it as well.
Amazing.
So yeah. But I think what I liked about it was that, like I said before, I really like research. So I'm a big fan of going down rabbit holes and like I get really into like little details. Like there was this one sign that I really, really liked that was from Flickr. Like I couldn't even find it again. I tried to find it before this podcast thing. But I think one of the images that I send you has it, and it's just from a real barber's that it says, the blade is my food. And there were like some prices on it, and just the design of it was really cool. But for me, sometimes I feel like I'm very inspired by real life, like people and their lives, and like to me those are like craftspeople that also have like this amazing creativity that I feel like you can almost never quite replicate anything as good as the original the original thing. So I think I get really like motivated, I guess, by finding out about I find it like fascinating, and I'll just spend hours digging in different places. And there was like an exhibition that MoMA in the States put on of West African barbershop painted signs. So I got really into those as well, of like the different styles of hand painted sign.
Do you ever end up with like a collection of just like random stuff that you've brought onto streets that are taken with you home, or do you have to give everything back once you're done?
So a lot of the things were prop house items. I think a lot of the smalls, which I sent some photos because that's another thing, is a lot of details don't get into the video. So a lot of the we'd put a lot of thought into like the colorways of all the smalls on the tables and like how they were laid out, and using reference images for those. But they were all prop house. But I think sometimes it's just having that eye for like color matching or like what looks like it would be authentic. But for example, Zoe's commissioned piece, Ronami's took that. His team took that because they really liked it. And I think at one point they were going to use it for something. But yeah, so sometimes it depends on who the client is, whether they'd like to keep things. But I do have like I do have quite a lot of furniture and stuff in my house. That's from set.
So this is obviously one shot that we get to see of the barbershop. You said a lot of things went into it, and I hear this a lot from like art directors, production designers that you do all of this dressing up, and then sometimes you might not even see it on camera. So could you maybe tell us a little bit about about this frame? What are we actually
looking at?
What are we looking at exactly?
Yeah, for sure. So. I think I've sent you a before and after, which I think will be quite interesting for people to see as well, because we lined all of the walls with that red gingham fabric that I mentioned. That was taken from that reference, and we put a new floor down. So you can see in the back right, there's like a doorway which we covered with red like voile fabric. So all of that plus the lighting. So we have some practical lights in there as well. It's just off screen to the right. We have a small one, and you can see the one in the back left. All of that, I think, warmed the space up a lot. But then the other really important thing that we did was the entire place was just lined in posters. Partly, you can see here on the right, some of it is because that was all mirrors, and we couldn't, because we had steady kind of moving around a bit, we couldn't really have mirrors like that in the space. So we knew we would have to cover all of those. But I think that's what creates a lot of the texture. So if you can see behind this barber on the right, his head, there was even that entire back wall also had posters that you never really see.
But we know it's there.
On it, yeah. But I don't know, I feel like I've made peace with some of that process of not seeing the details of small things, because to me all those details have to be there for it to feel authentic.
Exactly, yeah.
And that texture has to be there, and because I don't know, the way my brain works, I can't just put anything there. I have to make it so when you're in it, it feels real. It's
supposed to be there.
Yeah. So for me, you still get like visual value out of those items, even though the audience might not see like all the exact tiny details. But also on this right side, that was what we probably dressed about 50% of that. We were quite lucky because obviously it's a barbershop. They let us keep all their stuff up there. But we tried to put in a bunch of colour. But what was a shame was I'd made this, what I'd thought was going to be the hero area behind him, because I think our angle for a couple of shots changed a little bit. So just off to the right past this fan, I'd like put all my favourite bits, like this old radio, like a really beautiful crucifix that's made out of shells, like a little Nigeria like flag and stuff, and that never made it. It was, but it's okay. It happened.
We know it was there. You mentioned obviously the use of practicals on that. So what's your relationship with the cinematographer on set like this? Because I'm guessing that it's quite an important part of it as well. Yeah,
I think it's a really important part of it. So cinematographer on this was Miguel, who I think is on this series. So usually I take their lead, because in terms of practicals, I usually on a recce I'll always ask a DOP, how many practicals do you need? A lot of the time is how many can you bring? It's just like what does your budget allow? But other times they kind of know. I feel like it's quite typical in a scene you'll need like 2 to 3 points of, because you can see there are actually 2 on this right side. So one is just off screen by the fan, there's the green shade, and then there's the floor lamp in the back left. So we cross over quite a bit on that stuff, like the curtain in the back. There's other little bits and pieces we cross over on, and then I think also a lot of cinematographers will see certain things. They sometimes help me out as well. If we're like looking at a frame and I've been running around, they can sometimes see areas when they're framing up and I'm still trying to set, of where there might be little gaps that I need to look at or something. So I feel like it is a collaborative process. And I think, for me, it's really important to build like a good rapport on set with people that you work with, particularly director, cinematographer. Even gaffer. I like to have a good supporting good rapport, but because I always feel like the point of having a team, how I feel about team is that the sum of the parts should make up something greater than all your individual parts can make, right? But in order to do that, you need to be supporting each other to like make that happen.
Yeah, you definitely summarized that really, really well. I'm going to show another piece of your work, which is the Crack magazine photo shoot. Obviously, this is more on the still side rather than video. So I want to find out exactly what your approach is, if it's any different to approaching a video. I think earlier on the podcast that you mentioned that you've got maybe a lot more time with the still shoot. So could you tell us a little bit about this Crack magazine photo shoot?
Yeah, so this was, the photographer was Cisse, who I'd worked with quite a few times prior to this. So that's already very helpful to have that like collaborative relationship again. He'd sent me some references. We'd sort of gone back and forth on the run up to this shoot of what we were looking for. But I think one thing that I loved about this shoot and love about working with him is that he's quite open to suggestions. And sometimes he'll know when it's not quite the angle he's going for, obviously, but he's quite welcoming to experimenting a little bit as well. So I think what I found cool was I had certain references and certain ideas that I'd thought about, but some of these, so like the patchwork one, that was sort of made in situ. Like we hadn't really, really specifically planned that out beforehand. But I'd like had an idea, kind of explained it. We had enough time to try it, so he was like, sure, go for it. So yeah, I think I like working with fabrics as well. So I think that's something else I like about these. Is that
trips to the back? Is that what you mean by the fabrics?
Yeah. So I think something I like about stuff like this is that this backdrop, because it's, and again with the one with the 3 panels of the brown and the red one, all of them, we didn't have a super specific, like we want the fabric to sit like this and this and this prior. We weren't like replicating an image.
Okay.
We had some reference points, but then I think what I love about that is that you're creating something kind of organic that exists for that photo shoot. And that, of course, you could like take a photo and replicate it again, but I think there's something about the art of like creating that in the moment for this that isn't just like looking at a photo. Because I think there are so many projects that I get that people just want to
just copy what was done.
And I also have a kind of a, I feel like policy sounds like a really uptight word for it, but I have a philosophy, yeah, that's a better word. That I do sometimes have new clients coming to me and say, we want this set. And I'm like, and it's one of my sets, but I'm like, I can't give you this exact set because this set was for another client.
Yeah.
You know, like we can do something really similar and I can like change some bits around, but I'm not really a believer in like copy pasting a set that I've done unless it's something super simple that has existed in lots of different iterations elsewhere outside of what I've made, or you know, something like that. But yeah, so I think that's what I feel like that was a bit of a luxury that I had, was to like create in that way on that shoot.
No, it's a good philosophy to have, because at the end of the day, if you created something, you know, for a client, it becomes essentially their intellectual property, becomes their work. So if you then duplicate that for somebody else, I'm pretty sure they're not going to be very happy about that, seeing you went for them elsewhere. So it's a good thing to follow. There's one more project that I want to look at, which is from what I've seen, seems to be a mixture of both stills and video.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So what was the Sony Pictures Spiderman Across the Spiderverse projects like? Because obviously, like I said, you're doing both stills and video. So was your approach a little bit different? How were you thinking about the fact that you're doing both photos and video?
I didn't really think about it actually, because from a set perspective, it's the same set. And I think what's good about this is, you know, there are some projects like this that I just have one set. Once that set is up and done, it stays like that for the day. You know, it's not something like with the short films and stuff, when we're turning sets, we're like putting up, taking down through the day, or like with some still shoots, you're putting up different sets, like the magazine cover, you know, we're putting up different sets throughout the day.
Yeah.
This, we had a build day that we put everything in. And then it's just keeping an eye on it for like things that get moved around and having to move them back for continuity. So I think sometimes with like stills and video, it's less whether it's stills and video. I guess it's more with like how a set is being used, whichever regard that's in. But yeah, this was a really interesting one because of the reference. The team are great. We'd worked like together before. I love what they do at Take More Photos.
Take More Photos, yeah.
It's amazing. But I found it interesting that our reference to build the set was a cartoon. So,
Okay.
So we were like creating a real life version of something that exists in cartoon form. Which was really cool. I like that. I remember like when I first worked with Silent Tapes, but we did this like shoot in the middle of Epping Forest at night. It was like a really beautiful shoot. I remember just thinking like, this is so crazy that people get paid to like take this idea that's in their head, make it in real life, and get paid to do it. I was just fascinated. I was just like, how does this? I think I'd never thought about it in that way, because I think everyone who's got an imagination has loads of ideas and loads of like, and even when you're a kid, I feel like that's one of the like purest forms of our creativity is when you're a child and make believe and like how children's minds work is that like literally anything is possible.
Definitely. So we're very lucky to be able to, like I say, continue that sort of childhood sort of mentality, isn't it?
But to make it exist in real life, I'd never had something like that because usually you don't have the resources to make it exist in real life.
That's
like
true,
this.
Yeah. It's live in your imagination.
So for me, this was kind of interesting. Of like, oh, this bedroom exists as a cartoon. It's never existed in real life. So I felt like that was kind of cool.
Fantastic. So you've done across the board, like we mentioned, so many different types of formats. Over the years, are there any sort of moments or some lessons that you've learned from projects that maybe might not have gone, so well that you can share with us?
My number one lesson is don't assume anything. Don't assume anyone knows anything. Don't assume anyone make sure everything's in writing. Make sure I think these are general lessons that are probably like sprinkled from different projects that now I feel like, again, now I have a philosophy of certain things. I feel like this is quite specific to set designers, but like I always make sure everyone knows exactly what's arriving to set, including sizes, dimensions, quantities. It's in an email. My thing is, if you haven't read that email, that's not my problem.
Again, a producer's nodding her head like, yeah.
No, I've told you in writing on an email. So that, I think I definitely had a few experiences it was nothing crazy that meant something went really badly, but I had a few like, oh, I thought this is going to be bigger than this. I thought we were going to have 10 of these. And I was like, when did I ever say that? I never said that. But I realized that when people are busy, it can be hard to retain. You're obviously focused on your department and you're speaking to people who are juggling a bunch of other things. So they're not going to remember like detail. Sometimes 50% of the conversations you have, unless you put it down writing, like here is a summary. This is what we discussed. This is what we're doing. Yeah. And then I think another one is about branding on commercial shoots. Branding, brand colors. That was like an interesting. Nothing had gone wrong. It was like a brief that I'd gotten from a brand I was working with that they don't use any of their main competitors' color in their set anywhere, which makes sense. But then they also didn't want to use their previous logo's color, which was red. So I had to have a set with 0 red in it anywhere. So that was a really good learning curve that now when I do commercial shoots, I usually flag that up front. I'll ask for like branding guidelines to document. Also asking for if there are any specifications of what can be on screen, can't be on screen. With foodstuffs, there's also quite tight regulations about how much sugar can be on screen at any one point. So there was one brand, it was like a picnic scene, but you couldn't see any other food because it was for a coffee that had, like, if you saw other food, it would push the sugar content over a certain amount. So there are certain things that I'm still learning a lot. There's still, it's made me realize there's just like a whole multitude of things depending on what industry you're in. But I think what I've learned is to try and have those conversations up front with a producer at this. Like, I always flag it, because even if they should be flagging it, like I said, everyone's busy. Sometimes people forget. So I'm always like, is there anything I should know about this brand? Colors, even in terms of, again, food and drinks brands, they're often quite particular about the types of cups or glasses. They'll have guidelines around how they show their product in whatever vessel it is. There's also, so I think once you realize that even if it's an industry you haven't worked with before, you start to think, oh, okay, what could be the case?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? What could be a limiting factor? Like, let's have that conversation.
Yeah. You also mentioned research is a big part of your process. Are there any sort of books or anything, your literature that you can recommend or that you've been reading?
So yeah, in terms of like referencing stuff, and inspiration. Yeah. So I feel like I'm a really big fan of trying to become familiar with what I see as like the original source of inspiration. So I feel like where we're at now, so many things get remade, but then the thing that we're remaking is often inspired by something, which is often inspired by something. So there's often, like, to me, I try and get as close to like version 1 as I can. So that might be like films, but I try to stay offline quite a lot in terms of references and inspiration. So I go to books a lot, because I think I had a really interesting conversation with someone who owns an interior design agency who they'd done the design for a hotel. I'd like gone into the hotel, liked it, and asked the hotel, who did your interior design? And they kindly, I just emailed them, was like, can I come for a coffee? And they've built up their own library of books, because what is in books has not made it online yet. So there's, I don't know what percentage, but there's like a portion of what exists in like photography and creative books, which I found out to be true as well, because there's a photographer that a lot of his work I like. He was Grace Jones' main photographer, Jean-Paul Goude. And there's a series of photos that's like my favorite photo of his, and then when I got the book, I found there were like 2 more photos in that series that hadn't, and I'd been searching online, and even the online one, there's no like high res one of it. So I'm a big fan of books. I'm a big fan of like art galleries, films, old films as well. Just stuff that's not Pinterest, I guess. And I use Pinterest a whole lot. Like you have to, or like whatever referencing when you're in when you've got like 2 days to put together a deck, like you can't be going to the art gallery and whatever. But I think just being conscious of those sources are quite good. Yeah.
And then just one last question in terms of like working in industry as a whole. Obviously, it can have its ups and downs. And, one day you could be on a project that's going really well. Another time you could be very busy one month as well, and it could be quiet the next month. So how do you maybe deal with the challenging aspects of like dealing with your mental health in this space?
Yeah, I've been quite open with people who know me that I have quite a long history of like depression. And it's been a real like learning curve how to manage that, especially because I realised it was linked to my periods as well. So then that was what made me realise it's so regular, because it's happening every month for a week. So the thing that has been most transformative for me in the last 2 years has been regularly going out into nature. So every week or every other week, I take about an hour walk. I'm lucky enough that I drive in London. I drive about 20 minutes from my house. There's like a really big outdoor area that's like more wild than a park. A park's good, like if that's what's accessible to you. But I think it's the process of the physicality of walking plus the nature. I think there has been studies into this of like we're designed to be in green spaces. It has an effect on our brain. And it sounds so simple, but it's really helped me just stay more grounded and I also see it as a reset. So like if I've had a heavy week, I make sure I get that in and don't wait another week. So that's a really big part of it. Like exercise. I think I've been quite big on just trying to find things that work that aren't medication. and I'm not like anti-medication at all, but I'd like to find out what is available to you in the entire spectrum, as well as medication, you know. So, but I think as well, I think what I guess if there's advice to be had is to find whatever your version of that is. And for me, I think that was so helpful because, like I said, I grew up outside a lot. Like when I was young, that was a super safe space for me as well. Like if I got bullied a lot, and like when stuff was going on, like being outside was very consistent and very familiar and very safe. So I think it taps into some of that. But I think for different people, that could be an activity. I think there's something about the physicality of it that's good, you know? So like some people, it might be different activities, riding a bike. Like I know someone else who loves riding. That's their thing, you know? But I think finding something that is consistent and also doesn't rely on other people is that you can build that consistency, that's like a reset, a grounding practice that you have. Yeah.
No, it's really, really good advice there. I think obviously being hooked up on sets all the time, you know, it can be really good to, you know, get out there every now and again. Obviously we're running out of time a little bit, so I want to just move over to our final segment of the podcast, which is the game segment. Yeah. Honestly, I think you may be daunting us a little bit. You said to me before this that you rebelled as a child against cult films and you've never seen Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, no, my dad. You love that anecdote. Have to bring that in there. Yeah. My dad tried to like get me into Reservoir Dogs when I was like 10 or something, and I was like, "Why are you showing me this? This is really violent." Because he's a massive film buff.
Let me quickly explain the aim of the game for anyone who's listening. So the idea is that we're going to play you 5 clips that are blurred, and you're only going to have the audio to reference, and you have to guess purely from the audio alone. So this is the first out of 5
and this
clips.
can be like any film from anywhere, anytime.
From anywhere, but I have taken your brief into consideration that you like not cult films, so you like the sort of the girly sort of cheesy films. Okay, so maybe 1 or 2 of them are in there for you. Now let's play the first clip.
Tell us about your ghosts.
No, I am sick of that subject.
Oh, Delia, lighten up.
I would rather talk about
Do you want to hear that one again, or can you guess from there? Yeah, one more time.
No, I am sick of that subject.
Oh, Delia, lighten up.
I would rather talk about
It's quite a difficult one there, no? So that one was Beetlejuice.
Oh my God, I should know that as well.
Yeah, it's very big on, like, obviously, of course, the design on that is just amazing.
It's amazing. I love Beetlejuice as well, but it's been years since I watched it.
All right, so we're going to play the second clip for you now.
I have no hope then. If I can't get Beetlejuice, I'm done.
It's over. Hopefully you do better on this next one.
In a really, really big, pretend to like your taste in music, let you eat the last piece of cheesecake, hold a radio over my head outside your window, unfortunate way that makes me hate you, love you. So pick me, choose me, love me.
Oh my God, that's such a famous one as well.
Yeah.
There are so many memes around that.
Yeah. I'll give you a clue. It's not a film, so it's a series.
Oh, then Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, I shouldn't have done that, shouldn't I? But
I thought it was her because I was like, isn't that Ellen Pompeo? But then I was like, I can't think what movie she's in.
Well, you got one out of 5 so far.
Okay.
It's doing okay so far. Next clip.
Stop. You're going to take someone's eye out.
The voice alone.
You're saying it wrong. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
You do it then if you're so clever.
Go on.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Obviously Harry Potter. I think it's the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah, well done.
I think it's the first one.
You even got the actual name of it.
Yeah, I'm a Harry Potter nerd.
I picked that one specifically because just that.
Did you know it's a Harry Potter?
No, but I think from that it's a classic film, isn't it? And Leviosa was one of the only things that actually rhymes with my name that I found as a kid. So I thought I had to throw that in there.
Look at that! I love that trivia.
Fun fact. So we're going to play the 4th clip for you now.
You left your purse at the vending machine and some guy tried to steal it. I fought him off, but I think I dislocated my shoulder. You scratched the leather! Oh! Could you do anything right, Patrice? Nobody asked for your help, Patrice!
I feel
love
like
that
I
character.
feel like I know what this is, but I can't. I can't.
You can't. The
No.
laughing doesn't give it away as well. Obviously, there's a laughing track at the back, so it's a sitcom. But just take one guess. I'm not going to give you any more clues.
I don't know.
No, that one was How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, I
That
don't
was
watch
Robin.
that.
You don't watch that?
No.
You never seen that? Oh my god, classic. 8 seasons or 10 seasons even.
Okay,
And it went
I
over.
can
You
get
have to
into
go
that.
back
I
and
can-
rewatch that because
I will.
it's a classic. And then the last one, please.
Would you stop thinking about what everyone wants? Stop thinking about what I want, what he wants, what your parents want. What do you want? What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want? What do you want?
I feel like we've chosen
Jeez.
all the meme ones. There's so many memes for that. I feel like I know this one.
This is one of the cheesy ones.
It's
so
the one that there's the scene where they're in a boat. So that one.
potentially not this particular scene.
Not this scene, but there's what it's like the love story. Oh, I just can't remember the name of it.
No, I'm not gonna have a guess at all.
I think we'll be here too long if I try and remember it. I know it though. I know I can like see the
Yeah. It's the Notebook.
Notebook. I knew that. They get half a point for that. I knew it.
Not at all. That's all right. Well, you have done pretty well. So you got the 3 out of 5. So yeah.
Did I get 3? 2.
Okay, so that means you
No, I got 3.
Okay, so you haven't done too badly. You got 2 out of 5.
3.
The worst person that we've had has scored 1 out of 5. So
Yeah, I know who that is.
we're not going to name any names. But brilliant. Well, yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast, Lottie. Just one sort of final question on what I've got you. You've got other stuff going on. You mentioned that you're more on the business side. You started your own production company. Is that right?
Well, like set design studio.
Set design studio. Yeah.
We
So
focus on set
Studio
design.
Atticus.
Yeah.
So do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about that and why you decided to pursue it in that sort of way?
Yeah, I'm not sure why it just felt right for me. I think I've always been someone who has kind of put my work first, I guess, and I just like the idea of also it being a brand name. Because there are also some jobs that I'll oversee the design. I might send like an art director out, and I just like the idea of it all being under one branded name. But that we also do like events. We do a bunch of like event design installation as well. And I'm hoping to get into creative direction a bit more this year. So it kind of sits under one roof. But yeah, I think something else that I'd mentioned is that I'm looking into also providing some like information, resources, education for small businesses and freelancers in like building a business, even just the boring parts of it, of the nuts and bolts of like what systems you have or like what you might track, how to figure out your rates, how to negotiate, good communication, like a bunch of stuff that I think you kind of get fast tracked into understanding how to do when you've come from the corporate side. But I realized that when you don't have that super structured way to learn, that it could be helpful, I guess, to have some information that's from that kind of context. Because I think at the end of the day, if we're making money off of it, it's a business. And how do you put yourself in the best position to advocate for yourself and negotiate for yourself? Because we all know that can be super difficult when you're up against businesses that are very, like, a lot of the places we work with, they're like brands, they're big businesses. They know how to negotiate. They're trying to increase their margins. They're trying to get the best deal. They're trying, and like, how can you, A, put yourself in a good position for that, but also B, feel like you have some agency over what you're doing. So I know from my own experiences, and a lot of other people can often feel like you're just waiting for stuff to happen or things, external forces. And I think it can be useful to say, okay, what is in my power? Like, how can I maybe learn skills that I need? How can I be more organized about my business, like finances, which I know everyone shies away from. But I think with anything that is anxiety inducing, it becomes a lot less if you like look at it in the face. Like, okay, you know, like what do we need to do to like make this feel more structured? So I've been doing some sessions with people I know in the industry, sort of one-on-one, but I wanted to roll it out into like a more accessible format, I guess.
That's brilliant. It's a great idea.
Thank you.
So is there anything that we can look out for from Lottie coming up? Any exciting projects that you got going on or you're excited about?
I recently did a short film that I'm excited about that I think is going to be coming out this year. And then I've got a couple of... I never really know what I'm doing, like, a week in advance. Like, that. I mean, I love it. It's like, but I think I'll be very interested to see where this year goes, because I think I can see how I've been building, but I also feel like the industry's in a kind of weird place right now.
Yeah.
So I think, which you could perceive it as a negative thing, but I'm also a believer in like trying to just adapt with how things are moving and see where you can position yourself, what you can do. So I think I feel like it'll be a year that will keep us on our toes. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Lottie. If any of our listeners or viewers want to find you, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. So my socials are at Lottie Not, Lottie Not, on socials. If you're interested in the like small business education stuff, I actually have a sign up link that you can put your email in, which is studioatticus.co.uk. And there's a button that says sign up. So you can just share your email. We're obviously not rolled it out yet, but I'd love to connect with anyone who would like support with that. Or just drop me an email, which is also on that website.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time coming on the podcast.
No, thank you for having me.
It's been great to have you.
All right.
Thank you for watching and listening. If you enjoyed this content, then make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the official London Podcast Studios channel. If you want to join the creative community and find out how you can get the picture, then make sure to click the link in the description.